We are so grateful that you've joined us tonight for a special presentation of the first of 3 or 4 programs, three public programs, and that are being hosted by the Tri-City Interfaith Council and the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County. And the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County is from Richmond to Byron, Martinez to San Ramon, and we understand the Tri-City is in the Fremont area, and we're so grateful to be able to do these together and to offer it to folks that haven't seen these programs before. So tonight we're going to have the Defusing Hatred Program, and then next Wednesday is the Everyday Peacemaking Program, which is a follow-up program to that. And then we're going to take a little break, and if you are brave enough and if you have a story of a time when you experienced discrimination, and if you'd be willing to share that on August 18th at our Courageous Conversations, then please talk to Joy Barnitz or myself in the chat room, or you can email me at interfaithccc@gmail.com and let me know if you'd like to be a part of that. And there will be some members of our community that will be sharing some of their own stories for us to be able to learn the skills that come with compassionate listening, which is an interfaith discipline that is a part of peacemaking and interfaith skills that we'll be delving into more on that last one, August 18th. But I will have a little training, just a brief one on the night of Wednesday, August 4th, to give you some kind of parameters for what we're looking for. And we'll have anywhere from 3 to 5 people sharing some of those stories as a part of our listening experiment that night. And Joy shared in the chat room that her email she can be reached at Joy Barnitz, JoyBarnitz @yahoo.com. So let's recognize that the land on which we live and work and play is also unceded land from the Ohlone or the Bay Miwok tribe, or the coastal Miwok tribe, or even the Patwin, where I happen to be in Benicia, California. And that as we recognize this, we recognize that their unique history of people is needs to be recognized, and that we need to be able to help protect their sacred spaces. Whether that's the Sogorea-Te Land Trust or educating ourselves with others. And we will have a special educational program on August 25th about the Native American schools here in the United States. We've heard a lot about the schools and the mass burials in Canada, but we'll be recognizing what happened here in the United States on August 25th. So our Defusing Hatred Program, this is the 33rd presentation of it. I've given this in over 32 other faith or community environments, and it really came out of the conversations leading up to the 2016 presidential election and the rhetoric that was coming out of that, and especially how difficult it was for folks that were being pitted against each other, especially Mexicans and Muslims during that time. But we've also seen a rise in anti-Semitism over the last few years as well, as that rhetoric has increased. So we want to this program tonight, 1/3 of it's going to be an introduction to nonviolent communication, and we'll be watching some videos and understanding a little bit about this. And then we'll also be learning some interfaith skills for about 1/3 of our time, and then we'll be learning how to interrupt harassment when we see it nonviolently, and how to be there for folks that might be experiencing that. So let's start with our first nonviolent communication play actors, and they'll teach us a little bit about what NVC is all about, and we'll go deeper in this, and to remind us that we do have the communication skills already to be able to defuse painful and potentially dangerous situations.
So what do you want to do today?
Should we check out some museums and then go have some lunch and maybe go shopping afterwards?
Okay, cool. Anything that doesn't involve your mum, huh? That'd be good.
You say it like it's a joke. I can't believe you just
Well,
said
I
that.
am just joking around.
Yeah, it's really funny. You've been so miserable this whole time. Like,
No, come on. I mean, I'm just Really? I mean, the pair of you have been kind
Well,
of
look,
on
my mom
case
is who she is, and I never promised that she was going to be like the sweetest
Sweetest.
person to you. But it doesn't mean that you have to sit there all like mopey and angry the whole time.
I am not moping. Oh, this is
This
just.
has been totally.
Oh, this is so frustrating, you know, and it's disappointing as well. I read this book, Nonviolent Communication: A Language of Life by Marshall Rosenberg, and he makes it sound so easy, kinda, you know, like it can take a long time, but it's basically simple. It's like I empathize with myself, and then I empathize with the other person, and express what's going on for me. I get in touch with how I'm feeling, what my needs are, what she's feeling, what her needs are. It can take a while, but this is video, so it's going to be very fast. You'll see.
It's like the whole time.
Can I just interrupt for a moment?
I don't want you to interrupt. I just want you to hear what I have to say.
I just want to find out how you're feeling at this moment. Is that okay? Can
I'm
you do that?
angry.
You're angry.
Yeah.
And you feeling hurt by this as well, or just angry?
Yeah, I'm feeling hurt.
And you're really wanting, is it some respect?
Well, yeah, I mean, for my mom too, yes.
And you're really wanting her to see what we're like together, and you feel like I've not
that'd
been
be
doing
nice.
that. Yeah. Okay, I understand that. Is there anything else?
You're using that NBC stuff on me, aren't you?
Well, I am. Okay. I am using it, and that's flustering to me. Okay, self-empathy. I'm flustered that she's just said that, but because I'm really wanting, some acceptance for my efforts to kind of communicate and connect more, and then empathize with her. I guess she's maybe finding it weird, or I can tell her, express what's going on for me, Okay. I am doing it.
Yeah.
NBC. What is that?
Why can't you just talk to me?
Why can't I just talk without doing NBC?
Yeah.
Can I tell you why I'm doing it?
Okay.
Okay, so I think I get into blaming and judgment and criticism quickly sometimes, right?
Yes.
And I am just trying to connect, just trying to have a connection with you and trying to care about what you're feeling and to actually ask you about it sooner, and to tell you what I'm feeling. That's what I'm trying to do. I mean, how does that sound to you?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Pretty funny.
That sounds good.
Okay. Good. Let's go.
Okay.
Newt Bailey and Elena Gardella offer classes on NVC, and you can find them at these links, CNVC or baynvc.org. And there's local courses on this. So the purpose of NVC is really to inspire compassionate, heartfelt connection that gets down to needs, so that we're recognizing each other's needs, to connect to the life in ourselves and others, to be inspired as well as to inspire, to give from the heart, right? What it's not about being nice, it's about being real. It's not about stifling intensity, but transforming it into that genuineness. It's not about changing other people's minds or getting them to do what we want. It's not manipulation. It's not just a technique or a formula, but it's a process. And so if you can think of it with these four steps that he talked briefly about, recognizing when our language is trying to diagnose someone else or being judgmental or using labels, deserve thinking that certain behaviors merit punishment or rewards, or demanding language, a denial of another person's choice, or a denial of anyone's choice or responsibility, and really taking away their free will. That's really what it's trying to get around of. So here's another video that's going to help us go a little bit deeper into this as well.
So yeah, I haven't been getting very many good cases lately. You know that time I took off because the boys were sick, and you know I got dropped from that one, and then
Your boss dropped you from that one because your boys were sick?
Yeah, well, you know,
Oh, you know,
deadlines.
if you should do with that guy. I mean, he is such an ass. I mean, I can't believe it. You really need to have a talk with him. You need to go in his office, sit him down, and straighten him out. I mean, he can't be treating you like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's not that bad. It's just, you know, it's just
Not
typical.
that bad. He's not giving you the good cases, and you're so smart. I mean, you really need to tell him, you know, how to treat you. But people only treat you the way you let them treat you, right? So you need to go in and teach him.
You know, it's just, that's what happens, you know, when you're working on a case, it's got a deadline. They're not going to stop for you. And so if you can't come through, you know, they drop you, and that's what happens.
So then you should get another job. I mean, you're going to live, how can you do that? Selena, work in an office like that. I mean,
So, you know, my mom and I could go on for hours with her advice to me, but I think that I'm going to go, you know, with what Simon's been doing, this nonviolent communication thing, check in with myself. What do I need? I need to be heard. I just need her to hear me. I don't need her advice. So I should check in with her and see what's going on with her. You must be really worried about me, are you?
yeah, I am. Sweetie, you spent so many years going to school, and now you're in this place where they're treating you badly? I mean, that's just terrible. That's just not acceptable.
It's gotta feel horrible seeing me go through something
Oh, I
difficult.
can't stand that. I mean, I know how hard you work, and then you go home to the kids. You know, it's like, do you ever get a break? I can't. I just, you know, I worry about your health, about you being overstressed, and not having any time to yourself. I just, and I just can't stand to think of people treating you unfairly and badly. It just breaks my heart.
Thanks for looking out for me. You really want me to be doing well.
And I want you to be treated well by everybody in your life. I just don't want to see you, you know, struggling and being disrespected. I mean, you don't deserve that. You deserve, you know, the best.
Thanks, Mom. I appreciate
Yeah.
you're always looking out for me.
Yeah. I really
Can I
worry
tell
about
you something real quick? Like, when I talked to you, I realized that what I really wanted was just to be able to talk and kind of get it off my chest and have you hear me. And I don't think I'm ready for a solution or strategies of what I need to do next. And I'm not sure if I'm ready to make the change at work that I need to. I feel like I just need to get it off my chest with you. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
If I just talk to you and you just kind of listen?
Yeah, just a sounding board kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you really don't want advice right now?
Not really. Thank you, though.
Oh, sure. Sure, I can do that.
Thanks, Mom.
It's really great that we have these little vignettes that kind of show us what we're trying to observe. And the real four components of an NVC expression starts with observations and trying to make that free of judgments as much as possible. So no labels, no opinions, trying not to have an answer about what needs to happen, just watching and listening to, trying to understand. And then if you can get to the level of feelings, without, free of thoughts, just really understanding your own feelings and understanding the needs or the feelings of others, that really is what number 2 is all about. And then, of course, this is an attempt to understand what the other person needs, free of strategies. And that way you can, if you need to, you can make a request that's free of demands that also make sure to preserve their freedom and free will. And to go a little deeper into these 4 that are now on the left, an example of an observation would be when I see or when I hear or when I notice this, I might need a little clarification to make sure that I'm really understanding what you're saying. Of course, sharing your own feelings, you would say, I feel this or I feel that. But you can also ask the other person what their feelings are so that you're understanding where they are. Because as you're trying to get deeper, to really getting to these universal human needs allows us to get to express this for ourselves, as well as encouraging the people we're speaking with to be able to have that same knowledge themselves. so that if we do have a request, we can make it in such a way that doesn't abuse their free will. So here's one example, honestly expressing your own feelings and needs with an awareness of feelings and connected needs might sound like this. When I see you read the newspaper while I'm talking, I feel frustrated because I'm wanting to be heard. Would you be willing to close the blankety-blank newspaper or phone for 5 minutes and hear my idea? So it's better without the blankety-blank. The way that I'm used to hearing that from my partner is with the blankety-blank. Close the phone for 5 minutes to hear the idea. But this would be a way of really letting them know what your feelings are and what your needs are, right? I see you're reading the newspaper while I'm talking and I feel frustrated. I'm wanting to be heard. Would you be willing to close the newspaper to hear my idea? Here's a different example, empathically listening to others' feelings and needs. And really looking for those qualities of empathic listening like presence and focus and eye contact and caring, verbal reflection of needs and feelings without the advising, fixing, diagnosing, all of that stuff, right? So are you feeling cold or angry, upset because you need, that would be a more clarifying question. Really going deeper into the feelings and needs because you're trying to get at what the other person really needs. They might not even know how to put it into words yet. And so sometimes you've been in conversations with folks that are really good at helping you become more clear about what you're actually thinking. It could be because they're using some of these skills. So one last little video from NVC Part 3.
Hi, Simon. Can I sit down?
Oh, hey, Isabel. Hi.
What are you reading?
Oh, it's this book, Nonviolent Communication by Marshall
right,
Rosenberg.
Right, that's what Selena was telling me about that the other day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's good.
yeah, she seemed to like it. You have a lot of free time for reading, huh?
It's some, yeah.
That's good. I'm really worried that Selena has so little free time. She doesn't seem to have a moment to take a breath, actually.
Uh-huh. You're concerned for her?
Yeah, I really am. I mean, she seems very stressed out. I mean, she had to take off work to stay home with the kids, and I have to say, I really wondered why you didn't stay home.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she's the main breadwinner, and I feel like maybe she's carrying too much of a burden.
You know, I'm just pausing because this is kind of hitting me a little bit hard, just the things that you're saying right now. And so I'm just taking a breath before responding. Just getting clear about, I guess I'm realizing I feel kind of bad about it too.
Oh.
And I really wish that she could have more free time and that I was taking a bigger part of the financial load right now. That's something that I wish for too.
Well, we're in agreement about that.
Well, I'm interested in how you feel hearing me say that.
Well, I feel a lot more sympathetic towards you, I have to say, Simon. I guess I was about to give you advice about how you could make more money, but Selena's been telling me that unrequested advice is not usually welcome. I guess you got that from your book. So I'm just thinking, I don't know. I guess it's hard for you not making a lot of money. I know it's hard for men especially to make less than their wives. I mean, I know how that works in the culture.
Yeah, it doesn't feel too good, for sure. And
You like your job?
I like what I do, you know. I work with teenagers, and I'm a counsellor for them, and I enjoy the work that I do and feel like I'm making a big contribution, but I also don't earn as much money as Selena does, and that doesn't feel good.
Well, you know, I have to say I agree with you. You are making a contribution. Makes me feel better about you.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. Thanks.
I never thought I'd be saying that to you, Simon.
No, I never thought you would be either.
So when you think about how you listen, here are 4 different ears that are used in NVC. Which do you primarily use? Which do you use in situations that are a little harder? What do you use in situations that might be a little easier? It's easy to blame others or even to blame ourselves. Sometimes we can get so centered in sensing our own feelings and needs that we don't have an ear for sensing other people's feelings and needs at the same time. This might be a place where we would be able to divide up into some groups and go over that, but let's just, rather than breaking up since there's so few of us, let's just ask let's think about these questions. What is your default ear? How do you listen differently in different settings and to different people? Have you had any aha moments? So I'm going to take us out of the... Hey, Willie. So what forms of ears do you listen with when you're speaking with your housemate or partner? Is it blaming others, blaming ourselves, sensing our own feelings and needs, or sensing others' feelings and needs? Sometimes we can be so intent on sensing another person's feelings and needs that we're not even aware of what our own feelings and needs might be at that time. Have you had an experience that plays into one of these ways of listening that you'd like to share?
Well, I'll share. I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but when I'm a minister, and when I was an intern minister, I was in just newly arrived in a congregation, and one Sunday morning, there's a woman that came up to me, just frantic. We were getting ready for the service, and people were sort of scurrying around, and she said, "I'm just so anxious. I don't know what to do. Please tell me what to do. I don't know what to do." So I was thinking, gosh, what do I know? I'm just an intern, just got here. And so I suggested that she and I would sit in another room where there wasn't anybody else at that time. And we just sat in the room, and I was thinking, what can I do? I don't have any ideas. I have just completely out of idea. I'm not going to be a successful minister if I can't think of anything to do. But I was sitting there holding her hand and not saying anything. And she wasn't saying, there were no words being spoken. After a couple of minutes, she turned to me and she said, "I feel so much better just being here with you." So that was a big lesson to me on the importance and the sacredness of presence, of just being there, And I've learned that lesson several times, with other people. But I try to, when I'm with somebody, I try to think of their needs. It's over a combination of my needs and their needs. I think that's basically where I start. And then also realizing you don't have to say anything sometimes.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah.
Yes. It's holy ground when you have such silence with others. Mm. There can be a lot being communicated without any verbal. Willie, did you have an experience you wanted to share?
Well, yeah, before my wife passed, I was married for 52 years. And so she passed 2 years ago on July 15th. July 17th. And over those years, I learned to become more of a listener and also more of an understanding of her feelings, because she was somewhat disabled too, and so she was in a wheelchair, so she could not get out of the chair and stuff like that. And you know, so I really, you know, I really use my ears and also my understanding and having compassion to what she's saying, and you know, allowing her words to reach my heart. And so yeah, so I've over the years, yeah, it's been it's a continuation of that experience over 52 years. So it really just didn't come and go. It's something that you have to cope with every day. You know, especially if you value outside of your immediate spouses, if you value your friendship with people, you know. But anyway, that's about it.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can sometimes catch ourselves knowing which ear we're using. We can sometimes catch ourselves not intending to be blaming others or even blaming ourselves, or being so focused on someone else's needs that we're not even recognizing our own. That can be an important piece there too. But even recognizing, what is my default ear at work? And what's my default ear at church? What's my default ear at the supermarket? There's lots of different ones. And then, of course, the fourth part of the NVC expression is, when you do make a request, make it free of demands. How do you respond to hearing others' feelings and needs, and how does that influence the request that you make? And this is an important piece, because when we make demands, we're actually robbing people of their free will, and we don't want to do that. One of the reasons why this is important, I'm going to move on here and keep us moving since we have a lot to go on, and Tony will have more opportunities for you to share. But the media bubble that we live in is pretty real. And this was from before the 2016 election. Someone did a study from MIT on Twitter, and they realized that the places that the Trump supporters hung out with on Twitter were very different than the multiple places where Clinton supporters were hanging out with. And when they dug a little deeper in, they recognized that some of these clusters had verified journalists and some didn't. And so those without any kind of verified journalists that could help people with the smell test or the sniff test, or knowing what's misinformation or not, the less verified journalists you have in different parts of social media, the more opportunity there is for misinformation. And one of the areas that they found was that there's overlap between some of these worlds, but then there's not overlap in some of these worlds. They just exist all on their own. So when they did look a little closer with some differing aspects, they were able to see, like, Clinton supporters in some of the groups on the left there were not as cohesive as the Trump supporters, and they interacted more frequently with users who followed both or neither candidate. They had few mutual follower networks in common with the far-right conservative cluster. And this large cluster that was found of Trump supporters had little mutual follow overlap with other users. And they were a remarkably cohesive group, and they really did exist in, or many of them existed in, their own information bubble. So when they went a little deeper even into this, you could tell what conversations were going on. Like, there were two gun conversations, one among Clinton supporters and one among Trump supporters. And guns were the sole focus of 10% of the people on Twitter, and the most of any other issue. And similar to immigration, there were clusters of gun users on both ends, and they were almost completely disconnected from each other. They might have very similar views on gun rights or even gun control, but they live in separate online worlds. If we look down at the bottom left, 4% of the user group talked solely about education, and those that do were very disconnected from both political conversations. And the racial issues being discussed in 2015, 2016 were the exclusive focus of 8% of the user groups, and that was more than any other, the second largest group. There was also an extremely high level of connectivity among these users, which suggests a lot of solidarity, but also singularity. So it was natural, and maybe it's become more natural that there are people living in the same home, but are living in two different universes. Or they might be living in two different social media universes where they're reading very different news, they're reading very different, hearing very different conversations going on in our culture. And no wonder there was a lot of conflict going on back then. And there were even some Thanksgiving dinners back then that were becoming quite tense, and some folks were having a very difficult time. So, and of course, we have to sometimes remind ourselves not to feed the fears, because it's easy enough to be afraid of everything that's going on these days. But one of the people that's done a really good job of peacemaking is a Catholic Jesuit named John Deere, and he's done a lot. And he wrote this book on peacemaking, the soul of interfaith spiritual practice. And he says the first thing that he does when he is approaching a peacemaking opportunity is to disarm his own heart. Because he recognizes that violence feeds on fear and misunderstanding. And so he'll say to himself this mantra: I dedicate myself to making peace as I practice justice in all the affairs of my life. Father Tom really turned me onto this part of John Deere's approach, but Father Tom Bonacci is a member of our elected council and governing board, and he's done a lot of trainings and helped in the creation of this portion of the interfaith middle portion of the Defusing Hatred Program. And when he shares a lot of the basics of interfaith work and the skills that we have as interfaith people and in relation with each other, he really views these as the basics. So he points out that religion and practice of such reaches across boundaries, borders of nations, people, spiritual practice. It really does have a powerful potential to contribute to mutual understanding and cooperation even between warring people, and that rather than making enemies of those who can be our companions on the road to that justice that makes peace, we need to distinguish between authentic practice of a given faith tradition and its misuse by terrorists and opportunists. Now, when I was giving this program a few years ago, a lot of folks were still tied up in a lot of the Islamophobia that was coming out from our culture, and a lot of people couldn't yet distinguish between an authentic Muslim and that is being misused by terrorists or opportunists. But I think today we're also seeing this between Christian nationalists that are, some of whom are using terrorism or opportunism of violence to try to enforce their beliefs. And we're starting to have this conversation about other groups that aren't Mexicans or Muslims, but also some of the folks that were a part of the January 6th insurrection. And there were a lot of faith images on January 6th at our National Capitol building, and a lot of Christian religious symbolism. But we need to be, as much as we can, distinguish between authentic practice of Christianity and those folks that are misusing it for political or opportunist perspectives. Father Tom says we must pursue and be honest about the root causes of religiously motivated violence and terrorism in all its forms. We have the responsibility to confront our own demons without justifying or excusing the violence of terrorism or scapegoating of other people. So knowledge of how terrorists attract people empowers us to responsibly respond to the growing threat, especially among younger people who are angry about real and perceived threats. So this is an important piece, and there's also some training coming out here in the Bay Area that they're just testing out in different forms that will help faith leaders know how to recognize when someone in your own congregation, regardless of the faith perspective, where they might be being radicalized online. And we know that this happens even in Contra Costa County because of the Ross Farka case of a self-described Nazi who had planned to shoot up a Jewish synagogue in Concord. We didn't know that there was a Jewish community in Concord, but there was a brand new Hasidic Jewish Orthodox community that had just opened up there, and they were very much afraid that he was trying to get other people to join him in a race war. The number 4 point here that Father Tom encourages us is that we need to support strong government who reflect the authentic values and virtues of its people. The powerful, greedy, and expedient cannot be allowed to control the masses of people for the preservation of their power and profit, as well as encouraging international cooperation. Just trade agreements, international institutes of justice must more and more become agents for developing a sense where we're interrelated, interconnected, interdependent. And then recognizing the spiritual, religious, cultural traditions of any particular people reflect the expressions of the entire human race as we quest for a compassionate ethic of peace based on justice. I love when Father Tom points out that all of the faith traditions and cultural expressions of humanity are the inheritance of all of us. And for each of us, precisely as human beings, we must live our lives for the sake of one another in all the affairs of our lives without culturally appropriating, but also learning from each other as we come into interaction. So one of the things that he really points out is that we found that asking the following questions can be of enormous help in fostering transformative understanding and dialogue. The first one, what do you really believe? And this is so important in interfaith circles because so often many of us in our own faith tradition or even in our own culture are conditioned to give the right answer, but that's not what this question's asking. It's not an attack on what's been taught to a person or what all Christians or all Jews or all Buddhists believe. It's what do you truly believe? It's a way of trying to get to know you and really going deeper. And have you met people that you have strong feelings or judgments for or against? Who are the people that you get along with more naturally than almost any other folks? Who are the people that you struggle with? Why is that? Asking yourself that might help you work with your own fears, stereotypes, and prejudices. And then he encourages us to ask this most important question: are you willing to meet people about whom you have strong feelings or judgments? If so, why? And if not, why not? Are you willing to actually be in dialogue with people that might have a different cosmology or worldview? And how do we create those spaces as interfaith councils for dialogue, for nonviolent conversations? Sometimes we have to set up safe structures where people with conflicting views and experiences can meet and engage in transformative dialogue. And in our courageous conversations, we're going to go more deeply into this. But this final point that Father Tom brings out is among the most important. It's important for us to meet people who we believe differ from us. It's important to humanize the issues separately from the people, to remember behind every issue there's a real life human person worthy of respect and understanding. And if you remember in the videos, we saw some examples of that where people were probably talking about their feelings more than at any other time than we hear very much in our own culture. So I want you to imagine that you are at a protest in San Francisco. There are people from 2, 3, 4 sides of the immigration issue. And they're protesting in front of the federal building. And I want you to ask yourself this question. Among those 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 differing sides, which side would you find yourself on this particular issue? Don't answer out loud, but just answer for yourself. And think about, why do you take that perspective? And then think about yourself in this story. The protest is over. Everyone had their say. You're walking back to your car over by City Hall, and you see someone also walking back to their car with a sign whose message seems antithetical or contradictory to your own. Would you be willing to go speak to that person? Again, don't answer out loud, but for yourself. Why or why not? If you decided that you did want to talk to that person, how might you approach them to be able to have a civil conversation about immigration, knowing that you're on antithetical sides, even knowing that 2 or 3 of the other sides might be antithetical to each other as well. Would you be willing to ask that person why they are taking that stance? Would you be willing to spend 15 minutes to hear that story? Would you be willing to spend 30 minutes to hear a fuller version of that story? Would you be willing to spend 45 minutes hearing the full version of what led that person to take the political stand that they had? So let's take a quick break from the PowerPoint. How do you feel with the answers that you gave yourself? Yeah, Joy.
In my experience, it's even when I've sat down with somebody with as open a heart and mind as I could have, I found it really hard to hold that place of listening and presence and hearing for over half an hour.
So you know that there's some physical limitations, maybe bodily limitations that might get in the way of being able to listen that intently for more than 30 minutes.
Yes, and my mental processes tend to, I'm very aware of counter arguments, and so my mind starts filling up on one side with how am I going, these are points I might respond to, and at what point does it be, how can I say them, and are we getting someplace? And sometimes that's very frustrating.
And that's fair. That sounds honest. I think that's the way most of us interact. But we're also in a culture that's trained us to listen to respond, not to understand. What's other people's limitations on that? How hard would that be for you?
Well, I'd like to think that I would be able to stay, and assuming that both of our schedules will allow us to stay and listen and talk to each other and understand where we're coming from. But I also know that if it's something that's so completely opposite to what I believe in, my tendency would just to be to let it go. You know, I'm not particularly happy about that choice, but that would be my tendency.
I think that if there was a situation where a safe place was provided for people to exchange ideas, in the scenario you gave, and I have been to many demonstrations in San Francisco, anti-war and so on, but I think that because I am on the pro-immigration side, I would have a certain amount of fear, especially in San Francisco. If I were alone, we're both going to our cars. Quite honestly, I would probably be afraid to approach someone, and that's just being very honest. As I said, it's good when we have an opportunity where spaces are provided for us to talk to other people. But I think I totally agree with all the things that Joy said. Sometimes you're so busy thinking of how I'm going to respond. And we did a great exercise at Jeff Dodge's church once, where we talked to someone else and we had to summarize what they had said to us. And, you know, and I think if you're listening with that in mind, but I think tensions are so high right now. And quite honestly, I also found myself thinking, because we are living in today's world, well, how do I know they've been vaccinated?
I think
That's a whole new level of fear of interaction with others, Cheryl.
yeah, I know what Tony's talking about. It's a kind of reflective listening technique. And of course, that's really good because if the person feels like you're understanding them, then they're willing to share more. And what I've run into is if they talk long enough, you actually might find things that you do agree upon. And I find this on Facebook a lot. You know, somebody will be arguing, and then they'll say something like, but it's okay to have, what do you call it, ballots, you know, mail-in ballots. And I'll say, oh, well, I'm glad you like that idea. I agree. That's a good idea of mail-in ballots. But why did you think it was so wrong? I mean, why did you have a problem with, well, anyway, the other side of the coin is that they have other issues that you don't agree on. And so anyway, I'm finding a really weird way of explaining myself, but I think that it helps to find common ground and then make it light. You know, you kind of make a little joke here or there so that they kind of feel like closer to you, and then you can actually maybe bring them into what you're thinking. So the reason why you feel like immigration is a good thing, and why kids need to go to school, and why everybody should have lunches, school lunches, and things like that. I think you actually might make some. Sometimes it's nowhere. Sometimes you can't get anywhere. But anyway. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Nasli, did you have something you wanted to share?
Well, I will be scared also because being an immigrant, I don't think I would be able to confront anyone. But if somebody asks me something, I am willing to listen. I'm a good listener, and I would like to tell my point of view also if they are ready to listen. But I don't think I will confront anyone because I will be scared that how they will react. So.
And that's fair and understandable.
I do go to lots of demonstrations, but I attended, but I don't think I have ever confronted anyone. So.
Yeah, so let me give you a different scenario now. Let me get us back here. Let's have a different scenario. This time, you've noticed each other. You're both walking back to your car. You've recognized that your signs are on different poles, even though there might be 2 or 3 sets. There's never 2 sides to any issue. There's always 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, right? Mm-hmm. So even if you've recognized that there's something antithetical about the positions you took during the protest, I want you to think about how much time do you think it would take for you to listen to that person to be able to earn the right to be able to share your perspective. And listening to them without correcting them, but listening to them and fully express as much of their opinion on that particular topic so that they feel like they have to listen to you. That might be a different way of approaching the conversation, and it might make us more comfortable in having some of those conversations if we knew that we're going into them without being confrontational. So another portion of an interfaith lesson that we can have that can help us with issues like this is from Jainism, and you've probably seen this image of the raised hand, which is called ahimsa in Jainism. And Jainism is one of those fascinating, many different religions from India. There's not just one India. There's not one Hinduism. There's a polytheistic system of Hinduism, but Jainism is its own tradition from India as well. And this symbol means non-violence. And it's a reminder to stop for a minute and think twice before doing anything. giving you a chance to scrutinize your activities to be sure that they will not hurt anyone by your words, thoughts, or actions. And you may have seen Jane's at interfaith events with the Silicon Valley Interreligious Council, and their president, Gira Shah, is a Jain. Or you may have seen Jains on TV on National Geographic, of the people who, when they walk, they're brushing the ground in front of themselves because they're so committed to nonviolence, they don't want to even hurt an insect by walking on it. So these are the folks that are committed to extreme nonviolence, including not eating anything or another animal, or being harmful of another animal, even insects. And among the three principles of Jainism is, number one, nonviolence is the heart of Jainism, not harming any form of life by deeds, words, actions, or thoughts. The second one is non-attachment, which basically is balancing our needs and desires while staying detached from any possession. So recognition that we come into the world with nothing and that we'll leave with nothing, and that the illusion of ownership pollutes our consciousness. And they do believe in karma accumulation, so this is one way of working against karma accumulation, as other forms of Hinduism also have that principle of karma. And then, of course, the third principle of Jainism is non-absolutism. We can have respect for the views of others, and we can only know the absolute truth by understanding different points of view. So we are called to be open to discussion and dialogues to know more about the truth. And it comes in interactions with others. And so in an interfaith world, when we're invited to bear witness, sometimes that's to protect the vulnerable, right? But sometimes it's also to protect each other's rights and dignity. So when we think of a situation like the one that I described earlier around immigration, which can sometimes feel like just a polarizing conversation, how do we even complexify the conversation and help other people recognize that there's not two sides to this issue, but there really are 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 approaches to this issue. And I think the impulse to be ready to bear witness to protect each other's rights and dignity is an important one. And I wrote a paper a few years ago called Confronting Ideological Violence and Hate Speech. You can go to this tiny URL, and I will just put this tinyurl.com/J6GHF3R is the fastest way to get there. It's in the chat room for you. If you are having a hard time finding it, I'd be glad to send you a copy. But in this paper, we talk about how do we address ideological violence and hate speech. And some of it comes from this, but among the other things that we've included in our response from Claremont Lincoln University and myself as an interfaith leader was just understanding where hate comes from, right? For the majority of it, it might be thrill seeking. It might be a young man who gets on BART and they are feeling their oats and they're going to yell at someone, and that's going to be the thrill that they seek. For others, it's defensive. Their attacker is defending their turf, their neighborhood, their workplace, their religion, their country. For others, it might be retaliatory, seen as revenge against personal slights or other hate crimes or terrorism that we might have received. But the smallest number of these folks are mission offenders or crusaders. They're the deadliest, but they're also the rarest. And as we think about this, and especially thinking about a situation where hate language is being used or aggressive behavior is being exhibited, being able to discern where the hate's coming from may help you in your personal choice. Because if we go back, if it's just thrill seeking, it could be that a joking response helps them receive the thrill-seeking itch for excitement and drama that they were seeking, and then that's it, and there's no other thing. But if it's this person who's like, unfortunately, like this Ross Farka, who really focused on the Jewish community in Concord, that really does sound more like a mission offender, because this is a person who was out there buying the guns, buying the ammunition, and sharing the Nazi hate speech. So figuring this out is the hardest And if you get any glimpse of what's really egging this person on, if it looks like a crusader, that's when you should be getting police or BART police or other professionals involved. If it's someone with a little less than that, it might be an opportunity for you to speak up with your faith voice. If you're a Muslim or a Jew or a Sikh or a person of color in this culture, you may have experienced something like this before, and if you speak up, it makes a bigger difference if it's coming from you. But for others, it might be figuring out when we can live out our highest callings of our faith traditions to stand up for others. So here's some great advice about how to really is a bystander's guide. And I think the Tri-City had a program on this a couple of years ago with CARE. And this is the best advice that I've found on this as well. Is that correct, Joy?
Yes, and we recently redid it, and we included, in addition to Islamophobia, transgender, et cetera, et cetera.
Because trans women of color are among the most murdered groups in our culture. So knowing how to stand up for them is an important thing as well. So what I'm suggesting is that there are these ways to interrupt harassment when you see this happening. And among the simplest ways to intervene is a little, it's not natural. It's not the natural way we might expect we would want to stand up for others, but it's actually engaging the person being attacked in conversation. That's the person, if you give your attention to them, then the person who's trying to get their attention or trying to own the libs or speak out against this or that group, whatever that person may embody, it takes a bit of their power away if you and the person are able to ignore the attacker. Now, sometimes that's not able to occur. If there's a real risk for being assaulted or accosted, then call the police and the professionals or the non-police interveners when the 988 number comes into play soon. But if it's a person who's just being verbal and they're doing it, it seems to you, for attention, let the person know that you've been in a situation like this, and that the way you've learned to respond to them is by ignoring them and giving all of your attention to each other, or even yourself standing in between yourself and the other person. There was a person that was called the potato chip hero on the subway in New York State or New York City a few years ago, and all he did was he just stood there eating his potato chips, and he just put his body between two people who were trying to be fighting each other. They didn't want to hit him, so they were careful not to hit him, and he was big enough that as a person that he kept them from getting at each other, and was called the potato chip hero. But maintain eye contact, continue ignoring the attacker, keep the conversation going until the person leaves. Or if they don't leave, then you might have to escalate to calling 911 or a couple other things that I'm going to share here in a minute. So really, the hardest part of this is engaging in conversation, letting them know that you want to be there for them. And if the person is closer to them than you can be, helping them know that you might have been through this before, and if it's just verbal, that this might be the best way for them to realize that they're not going to get the attention that they're desiring, right? So pick a random subject. What movie? Always know what last movie you've seen, and ask the person if they've seen that movie and what you liked about it, or have some kind of conversation that you can share. Keep building a safe space. Keep in eye contact with the person, and also maybe just out of the corner of your eye with the attacker's presence. But if the person doesn't go away right away, you might start to involve other people on the train or in the mall, saying, would you mind taking a video of this interaction, because we don't know what this person may do. And that might help them recognize, oh, I'm going to be on video. I might make it onto the news if I stay here, and I might want to go. very rarely does that escalate someone to do more violence than if they've already done it. But continue the conversation as much as you can until you can escort them to safety. And here's the thing, stay with them, because if you don't record and report with either the law enforcement or the Southern Poverty Law Center, and there's a way to do that with the hashtag report hate, but there's also a great app that you can do that with. If you don't record and report, then the mall security and the BART security will not know that this has occurred, and this person may feel as if they now have permission to do this whenever and to whoever they want to. If you're in a mall, go to customer service. If you're out in public or you're on BART or you're in a public place, call 911 or call 988 if you don't think that you need an armed police response. But you may even choose to record it here. Of course, there have been some police who are always worried when people are recording them, but it is always legal in all 50 states in the United States, because it's a part of the Constitution, that we have the right to be able to record the police doing their job in a public place. Now, if they're inside of a private building, then you may not have the right to be able to go in there to follow them if there's something else going on, but you can always ask the person who's being victimized what they would like from you. Would you like me to video record this interaction? Are you feeling safe right now? Is there anyone that you would like me to call? That could all be ways to help the person that's receiving it, even if the harassment's coming from the police. And we know that there's been harassment from the police and the sheriff's department in our county. There's even been murder of people of color having mental health crises in public places in the middle of intersections in our county. So we know that this happens on a regular basis. So if you're on your own, it might be a little different. How do you interrupt harassment when it's happening to you? You can try ignoring the attacker, but they may continue, especially if you're alone in a BART station or something. You can pick up your phone and pretend to make a call. But the other thing that you may want to do instead of just pretend to make a call is actually call your home number or a place where you know there's a recording machine that you have access to, because then you can actually record your own conversation about what's going on, or you can call 911 to get the help that you need. But if you think that they're just bothering you and once they see you on the phone they're starting to walk away, that might tell you that they were just looking for attention. So keep talking to the person on your phone, ignoring the other person as much as possible. Maintain conversation until the person leaves, but if they persist, then say, I have to call the police. There's someone here who won't leave me alone. And that's one way that sometimes you can get people to leave you alone. But of course, if there's discrimination that's happening, say in a retail outlet, and some kind of discrimination or harassment was happening from employees, please do report it to the customer service. Otherwise, the next person that looks like you in the mall or in the Macy's or in whatever store you may be will not get the help that you needed at that moment. And if you're worried about how the police will respond, one of the articles suggested calling the police after the incident passes. That way you don't have to bring a police officer to the scene. And if you're trying to help someone else who is experiencing harassment and you're trying to help them, you might want to ask them before you just call the police, would you like me to call the police? Because there are folks that are living without documentation status that would feel more at risk. If you called the police, then it would feel like they would need to leave as well in order to get away from a potential immigration violation. So, Brooks said, hate incidents of harassment foretell hate crimes to come. Law enforcement needs to be aware of it so that community members who are targeted can have hard data. In the event that you or another person is hesitant to intervene, the least you can do is report the incident after the fact so that they know that this happened in that place so that they can have better professionals there to protect others in the future. There's this great app that's put out by the ACLU called Justice California app, and it's for free in the App Store and in Google Play. And here's a little video about how you can use this to do your reporting as well.
Mobile Justice has three main functions: record, report, and witness. Hit record to film an incident, and the app will start recording both audio and video. To stop recording, simply tap the screen and the video will be automatically sent to the ACLU, and a copy will be saved to your camera roll. After a recording, the report screen appears. Include as many details as you can, like names, location, and what happened. Bypass the report by simply pressing cancel, but the extra information helps the ACLU learn more about your video. The test button helps ensure that your camera is working without sending a video to the ACLU, while report is a direct link to the incident report so you can submit an interaction without recording a video. All recording and reports are sent anonymously. However, you do have the option to include your name, number, and email in settings in case your local ACLU office has any follow-up questions. Witness notifies you whenever someone nearby is recording an incident with the app. To activate, go into Settings and click Broadcast My Location, then hit Witness. The green light indicates Witness is on. When an incident is being taped, you will be notified with the location of that incident. Know Your Rights. The Rights tab not only outlines your rights when stopped by law enforcement, but also gives you access to the ACLU's full library of Know Your Rights. Everything from your health rights to student rights to your right to protest. Alerts. Keep up to date with current ACLU actions, campaigns, and events. Subscribe to alerts by selecting your local ACLU of California affiliate in the app settings and allowing push notifications on your phone. Download Mobile Justice California today and keep justice within reach.
So wouldn't it be nice if there was a button like this? How many times have you wanted a button like this? It would be nice if we could just start over, but in many ways, we're in what some are calling in the interfaith world, the second axial age. If the first axial age that brought us the golden rule came to our cultures from 600 BCE to 600 CE, that told us that we should love each other and to love our neighbors as ourselves. Today, we're in an increasingly diverse, pluralistic, interfaith world. And in many ways, what we look to live out these days is an even more, a version of the golden rule that helps us go even deeper, called the platinum rule. And that encourages us to treat others the way they want to be treated. The hard part is that we don't know how other people always want to be treated, so we have to get to know them. So as we try to live out the platinum rule and go a little deeper than the golden rule, that's an important piece. But of course, we can join our interfaith councils and doing the advocacy and outreach in our own counties, and join with times when we're doing work with all of the different interfaith councils. We can have each other's backs. Even if you may not agree with 100% of the needs of another community, if they're coming under fire, being there and standing up for their rights and their protections helps them be there for you as well. And of course, money matters. We need to donate to organizations that are helping us, including ACLU. There's an Anti-Violence Project, Council on American Islamic Relations, Immigration Works USA, Mexican American Legal Defense Fund, the Naral Pro-Choice, if that's a part of your faith tradition or life philosophy, Anti-Defamation League, National Immigration Law Center, Planned Parenthood, Southern Poverty Law Center is doing amazing work around race and addressing hate groups, and especially white nationalist hate groups. The Trevor Project is for the queer community, but there's many different places that you can do. One of the programs we did for years to help people understand the life of American Muslims is we had different panels of different Muslims come together in Christian and UU and Jewish congregations to talk about their life experience, to break down stereotypes and prejudices. So do some programs like this. Recognize that Muslims do put out many statements, but the media doesn't always publish them. And so when a major event happens where they're the victims, I would look to see what statements they are putting out. as many people often make accusations against them. You can join other groups that are working at juvenile hall or the immigration detention, or working on immigration, or working on poverty together. The peace vigils we do whenever we come together, and especially around interfaith holidays. But there's lots of immigrant and refugee ministries, and even a sanctuary movement that continues to help people. Hopefully that will go away, or the need for it will go away, if we can get some comprehensive immigration reform. But there's really a lot we can do to show up for others. And that really is a recognition that any oppression oppresses us all. Some of the ways that we've done that in our county is being ready in the aftermath. After the Islamic Center of the East Bay was burned down in an act of arson in 2007, we had over 500 people in the streets, including 12 rabbis, the day after Yom Kippur, the day after their longest week of preaching. They made a point to be there, to be in solidarity with the Muslim community. After the Sikh and the Oak Creek massacre in Minnesota, lots of folks around the country came together. We've even done some rings of solidarity around some of our Islamic centers, like the San Ramon Valley Islamic Center and the Walnut Creek Islamic Center, when some of the Muslim bans were at the height. But we've also made some statements, and I see that the Tri-City Interfaith Council makes statements on a regular basis, statements of solidarity, programs with anti-racism training, sometimes even things with the Women's March or other ways of being in solidarity. So the question I have for you tonight is, what will you do next? How will you feel called? And I hope you feel a little more prepared to be able to be there for others, especially in times when they might be being targeted and harassed in public. And let's finish our time together, the last 10 or 15 minutes, with things that you'd like to share, or issues that were brought up from this program tonight that feed you in the moment.
Well, I have a question. Will we be getting any of this information in writing? Because you put a lot of things up there that would be valuable. And also, you mentioned something I had not heard of. You said soon we'd be able to call 988, which I hadn't heard of before.
Sure. Yes. If you want to put your address, I'd be happy to mail you the handout that goes with this. I don't have this one in PDF, but the next two, or the next one, has a handout that I'll be able to give to you in PDF. But I can mail you a hard copy that goes along with everything that you've seen. And this is going to be recorded, so it's going to be on the YouTube channel of the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County. But I'd be glad to send you the handout that go with this. And then if you want to watch it again and correspond some of the slides with what's in the handout, you'll have even more information there. But just put your name and mailing address. And I have to snail mail it to get there. Now, AB 988 is in the midst of being, thank you. AB 988 is being co-sponsored by Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, who's the Assemblywoman for Central Contra Costa County. She's a lawyer. She's been helping perfect the language with some of the learning that LA has in providing a non-armed emergency response. And they've learned a lot because they've been trying to create this in LA County and city and county for the last 2 or 3 years. And so they're trying to get all of that together into a state assembly bill that we're hoping gets passed soon. They're going to call it the Miles Hall Act, recognizing Miles Hall, who was shot by a Walnut Creek police officer a couple summers ago during a mental health crisis. And we know that it's not just mental health crises, but there are other crises that people have, and most of the homeless interactions can be done with folks that aren't armed, so that there's no risk of escalation. And that's an important piece for us to be able to live into the future. And we really, it's already garnering very good support. We think it's going to get passed this year, and that we're starting to see this as one of the key aspects of reforming policing in our culture, because not every response needs to have an armed police officer in response. And especially given the racial animus and racial hostility, many police officers were socialized into growing up. Making sure the right kind of social worker or trained volunteer can show up for folks is the most important thing that we can do. So this is a part of the low-hanging fruit, but we're also using some of the experiences that we have with, I think we've had 2 African-American men in the midst of health crises killed, one in Walnut Creek with Miles Hall, and I can't remember the name of the other person in Danville, but there was another young African-American man who was shot on 680 during one of the nonviolent protests during the Black Lives Matter protests a couple of years ago as well. And they're still bringing charges against him as if he was an armed felon coming after the police, but he was at a nonviolent protest on 680, and they're trying to make an example of him for stopping traffic. But that's the point of protest. So we're hoping that 988 becomes a statewide system where people have the choice. Do I call 911 for an armed response? Is someone breaking down my door, or is this really something that I need an unarmed response for? It's a mental health issue. It's a homeless issue. We need to get the right services to these people. We don't need to just lock them up. Those are the kinds of conversations that we're hoping that even these conversations around harassment can help us understand a little bit more about what goes into escalation of some of those circumstances that didn't need to be escalated in the first place.
Yeah, the mental health community is very strongly pro that legislation. So my ministry focuses on mental health, and so I'm just really wanting to see that pass. So it's great.
Great.
One of the things that I hadn't realized until recently, when I heard the chief of police, who's about to retire in the city of Fremont, mention it in a community conversation, is that the police have difficulty recruiting from some of these communities, and therefore although they try outreach, they don't have as much understanding of different faith traditions and the boundaries and sensitivities and cultures. And one of the things that we're in early dialogue with the outreach group in Fremont is how can we help bridge some of that and at least make it more of a people have actually been inside a mosque, actually been inside various temples. How can we make that connection stronger? Have you had any experience with that in Contra Costa County?
Well, we've had some issues with that, but the partner that we have that you also have is the Islamic Network Group that's putting together really great trainings for teachers, fire departments, police departments, and others on that cultural competency that's necessary to understand the Vietnamese culture and what what some of the issues might be for you as a police officer serving that community. As well as the Hispanic, African American, but also some of the subcultures within some of those cultures as well, because folks from the Caribbean islands sometimes have a slightly different interaction with police and colonialism than folks that come from Native American reservations. So there's lots of differing ways that we can understand people. And, culture and religion are two sides of the same coin for interfaith workers. So much of what we do, we can't separate what's cultural and what's religious. And many folks that are first generation immigrants here, they don't make such distinctions, even though our culture does. And so when we might be talking about freedom of religion or freedom from religion issues, they might see that as something that's actually anti their culture. And we need to be careful that we're really understanding each other when we're in conversation there as well. And especially, what it is we're really asking of folks that are asking things of us. But yeah, ing.org is the organization, and they provide this free of charge to different police and fire and even city. You can have these trainings for your senior citizen staff that are working in senior centers. They do some interfaith panels that help people understand multiple traditions at the same time, or they can do some like understanding the difference between Sikhism and Islam. And one of the horrible things about our culture is that most people don't know the difference, but when they see a person with a turban, they think it's a Muslim, and so they're doing acts of violence against a Sikh person, or they shot some of them, like we've seen in Fremont or Richmond and other places. And the person's actually perpetrating an act of Islamophobia, but it's against a Sikh person because they don't know the difference. Anyone else? Please do share.
Yeah, I wanted to say about the 911 calls. Is there a possibility, the majority of the 911, well, I would say the 100% of the 911 calls go directly to the police department. So is there a possibility to come up with another number that will not go directly to the police department, one that has a medical issue?
I think that's what the 98 is all about. So it's a whole new number.
Okay.
The people making the call can make the choice between, do we need an armed response or a non-armed response? It'll take a lot of education, and we're probably going to have a lot of public service announcements to understand what that difference is. But my understanding is that they're trying to create these in a related but separate part of the emergency response. So that the professionals there can help ascertain what kind of response is needed. But if a person's asking for a 988 and a non-armed response, they should be able to get it. And that's what the AB 988 is supposed to be able to ensure.
Okay. The other thing,
Go ahead.
one more thing. So
You're
the other
good.
thing I wanted to say is that that in one of your earlier presentations, you talked about the folks walking upon a scene in which they have to make some kind of decision whether or not they want to do some kind of intervention or what. The problem with that is that we live in 21st century America. In 21st century America, people will pull out a gun and shoot you if you can walk around, if you stop, you look wrong. So that's, everybody has to be careful here. In terms of what they say and what they do. I think that, one of the observations I've made, just stand there and watch them. And if you got a camera, take it out, but don't be so discreet, because they may turn on you. But I think that by observing, that could be one way to slow down the attackers, or whoever they are, and make them leave the scene, because they know that you're watching.
The young woman who recorded the killing of George Floyd did a great service in reminding us all against the lie that some police officers use, that we're not allowed to film them doing their job. That is always a lie. They should be happy that we're recording them, because if all they have is their own body camera to try to prove their own innocence in the way that they're treating people, if they're treating people with respect and dignity, there should be no issues. But if they're not, and that's usually when they're trying to force people to put their phone away or to confiscate the phone, as many people that can open their phone and start recording together, then we can ensure that the police know that they're being watched and that the harassment won't also come from them.
Yeah, I was just not just talking about the police. I was talking about just normal citizens too, who are engaging in hostile conflict.
That too, and it can come out of the blue, and sometimes we never know what might trigger another person. But the more we can be a part of a calming influence, de-escalation, they have found that this approach, by being there for the victim rather than standing up to the perpetrator, is just the key that helps de-escalate the vast majority of these. If things start to escalate more, that's when you need to call the authorities as quickly as possible. But if you're the person doing the intervention, it's easier to ask another person to call. Would you please call the Bart police? Would you please call the mall police? Getting more people involved in the response means that the person who thought that they were getting people that would join them in laughing at this person at the expense of what they're doing at them now realizes that they're outnumbered and that we're not going to be laughing with them and that we're actually offended at how they're treating another person. Cheryl?
Yeah. Last night I was attending a Zoom meeting of a new racial justice committee that is representative of a city. And they were discussing the city budget and the police department. And the question was, what do kinds of sensitivity training and so forth do they have for their employees? And the answer was that the police officers actually train the non-sworn individuals on sensitivity training and racial justice. And one of the people on the committee said, well, that sort of sounds contradictory. Why would it be the police officer? And their answer was, well, because they deal with the public so much, they know what they're talking about. And my chin hit the floor. I can't even believe that this is happening, but I want to sign up for that class and see what it is they're telling employees. But have you ever heard?
Where is it being offered, Cheryl?
That was in the city of Martinez. Yeah.
I missed that meeting.
That's scary. Yeah.
They're not qualified.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll try to stay on the topic and see how it goes. But my mission in life is to bring racial justice alive in Martinez, because everybody's all about making committees and commissions and doing studies and having more meetings, and very little is getting done.
Correct.
It's a lot of talk and not much action. And so that's the project that I'm working on, is I'm trying to save a government building from destruction and have it turned over. It was formerly a justice building, have it turned over to the community to be a social justice art center and workshop center.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you can use some of these same skills in trying to understand what's going on, and even going in and asking, what is the motivation? Where are you coming from as you're trying to create this? Help me understand. And it could be that you learn something even more about it that you don't agree with, but now you at least understand their rationale for creating it.
Right.
But I'm afraid, the first wave of Black Lives Matter came through in 2013. And I remember giving a sermon after the large protests in Oakland, and some of the members of my own congregation struggling with my Black Lives Matter sermon that I preached that day. And for those that had any experience in the southern states, I could see them during the sermon nodding. And for those that didn't have that experience, and especially older white males, really struggle with what I was saying, because it wasn't their experience of the police. Even though I showed a picture of the California Highway Patrol officer who was inciting violence and vandalism and then used his gun to protect his partner when it became known that he was a police officer inciting this violence.
Wow.
So some folks are going to not trust that because all of their experience with the police is different than what I was presenting to them. They didn't have a way of making sense of it. Their confirmation bias didn't make room for that. But the more we can go deeper in conversation with folks and understand that in our culture, there's oftentimes these pendulum swings that come back and forth and back and forth. And just as someone's claiming their rights, there are other folks trying to push that pendulum back the other direction in order to try to protect what the people at the antithetical part of the 7 or 8 sides of that issue may be trying to reclaim for themselves. So if we recognize that this is always going on in our culture, how do we lift the conversation up so that we're talking about issues and not people? And how do we go deeper in those issues for justice? We can use all of these tools. All of these tools. And And even if you think you know it all, there's got to be at least one other angle to whatever issue that's out there that you may or may not have thought about, and you might be able to understand one of the 10 issues around immigration or whatever the issues that are at hand. But if we continue to talk about issues and not just people, we're able to help folks we're giving them the chance, like in NVC, to make a free will choice for what we hope is the right thing. And that's what we're hoping to do, is we're helping to give them a broad enough picture to now understand that their previous picture that they had of a certain issue is incomplete. Maybe I need to do more homework on this. And maybe in doing that homework, I can understand that this isn't going to be one of the reasons why we've not had comprehensive immigration reform is because there's 9 and 10 issues that go along with it, right?
That's right.
And there's competing communities. You have Mexicans and Cubans who are on 2 different parts of the political spectrum fighting for very similar things, but for only people that look like them in sometimes, not always, but sometimes, right? So helping us complexify the picture that leads to good policy, that's among the hardest work that's out there, but this is the interfaith work.
Thank you for that.
Oh, Cheryl, I missed that your city council meeting, because if I'd have been there, I would have not allowed that to get away. I would not have allowed them to get away with saying something about the police doing the training. That's insane.
Yes, I agree. I think that they're planning on bringing the subject up again. I had difficulty participating in this meeting. I'm not on that board, but I was on to speak during public comment, and they don't even allow public comment unless you're speaking to something on the agenda. And then everything on the agenda is not what you wanted to speak about. And so I thought, well, I have never heard of anything like this. It's very backwards. I believe the city of Martinez is actually, because I've been on several committees with the city of Martinez before, and they make a committee and then they throw away your report after 5 years. You know, they just lead you along for the sake of campaigning that they set up this committee, and then there's still no parking structure after 20 years, you know, so it's very frustrating. I feel like those people—
Why don't you email me, Cheryl? I'd like to know a little more about this. And,
Great. I don't mean to
I might want to look into it myself, so
Yes, okay.
I'd be glad to do that.
Thank you.
And I'll put my my email here in the chat room, but for those that are at home, it's Interfaith CCCC 4 C's @gmail.com. And so we're past our time tonight. We've gone a little over. It's 8:36, but we're going to go a little deeper in many of these same themes next Wednesday night in the Everyday Peacemaking program. And there will be a PDF in the chat room for you to be able to get a copy of that, to be able to follow along as we go through the program. Sorry I wasn't able to provide that tonight, but there will be that for next week. And I will mail hard copies to the other snail mail addresses that came in the chat room. And if anyone online wants to get a copy of the handout that goes with this class, email me at interfaithccc@gmail.com, and I would be glad to get one to you. Just send me your snail mail address and I'd be glad to send it to you. So thanks so much for being here tonight. Thanks to Joy for giving us the idea of doing this together with the Tri-City Interfaith Council and the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County. I've been looking for an opportunity to record these programs and get them onto our YouTube channel. So you'll find them there. And just come back in coming weeks for the other ones if you're not able to make the actual class. But we're glad that you're here tonight, and thanks again. And Joy, did you want to say any parting words?
I'm really grateful that we have people from the diverse area, because although different locations seem to have concentrations, we all are so mobile. We're going to run into these issues and problems. And we have many, many allies. Some of them are mental health professionals. Some of them are, in fact, public safety officials with various assignments. And I think we need to keep an open mind and stay curious about what is motivating other people. So thank you, Will, for responding, and thank you each for coming. It's a good group, and I look forward to the next sessions.
Yes.
And the link that you had for tonight is unique to you if you registered on Zoom with this. So please save this link for next week and the future programs. And I will send out a reminder for those that have registered before our next program. So thanks again for being here, and blessed be.
Into this session, can they still join at the next one?
I'm sorry, Tony, can you say that again?
I said, if someone wasn't here tonight, can they still join next week? Or?
Yeah, if someone wasn't able to attend tonight, this will be on our YouTube channel within about an hour. And then if they would like the handout, they can just email me at interfaithccc@gmail.com, and I'd be glad to get a copy of the handout to them, and then you can go through it at your own pace.
The recording and then join next week if they want to.
Can they
Say that one more time,
register?
Tony.
Can they still
I
register?
said if they can go and listen to tonight's recording and then they could still join next. Because listening to this made me think of more people that I think would enjoy hearing them.
Yes, you can keep registering even up to the August 18th, and all three will be standalone programs as well as recorded and put on our channel for future posterity. Have a great night, folks.
Thank you.
All righty.
Be well,
Yay.
don't
See
melt.
you next time. Okay, bye-bye.
Good to see you, Nestle.